Alright, hey guys, we're going to get started pretty soon. Alright, so here's what's going to go down. We're going to have a lecture portion and then we're going to have a demo portion. But first, since it's our kickoff meeting, we're going to do some introductions first of all the officers. And then we're going to serve you some food, and you'll take a seat, we'll give you a lecture, and we'll go done. Alright, food is kind of sparse. We weren't expecting so many people, so we're going to limit it to 2 slices per person, and officers should eat last because we might not have enough. So here we go. I am Manuel Philipose. I am the president of the IEEE Communication Society, and I am the handsome young guy on the top left right there. Go for it, Tom.
Okay, so I'm Tom Mulaney. I am the next guy there with the funny little picture. And I'm the vice president of ComSoc.
Hey guys, I'm Richard Fenchburn. I'm the corporate officer of ComSoc.
And former president.
And former president.
I'm the webmaster of ComSoc.
Dallas can be here. He's late, stuck in traffic.
I'm Kevin Hicks, IT Chair of Communication Society.
I'm Damon Smith. I'm the project manager of the Communication Society.
And I'm Oscar Torres. I'm the media director, I guess, which means I'm not
Take a picture of him.
doing my job. Yeah.
And now I'd like to introduce the new student organization, the Association for Computing Machinery Special Interest Group for Security, Audit, and Control, known as the SIGSAC. And I'm Kevin Hicks, the president of the thing. I'm a CS student, and I'm a junior here at the university.
I'm Michael Clough. I'm the vice president of SIGSAC, also doing NCS.
I'm Alex. I'm a finance chair, 4th year EE.
I'm Dick. I'm a sophomore EE, and I'm corporate finance.
I'm Kim. I'm a CS grad student, and I am the project manager for SIGSAC.
Alright, cool. Before we serve our food, we'd like to thank UT SIGSAC and the CS department for paying for all of it. And we're very lucky to have this joint opportunity to present to all of y'all. So we'd like to start serving food now. Just, I guess, line up in the most logical way.
Now that you finally situated yourself, oh, great.
Very organized, but I will be there.
Good to go. But in the ComSoc spirit of things, we decided to change everything around. So this presentation might not go as smoothly as many of you would expect, but hopefully it will go just fine. Like you saw, logistical error and having you sit down and then get back up and then sit back down. But let's get into the meat of it. So how many of you all are familiar with SQL or SQL? Wow, okay. How many of you have done or know about SQL injections? Alright, how many of you know how to prevent it? Alright, cool. So SQL, for those of you who don't know, stands for Structured Query Language. Alright, and it is the international standard for communicating with a database. So whenever you have a dynamic web application, the way it displays data is not stored locally on your machine. Instead, it's stored on a database on a remote server somewhere. And SQL is what's used to pull the data off of that database and also store it back onto it. What we're going to talk about today, though, is SQL injection, which is a form of remote code execution, which attackers find very useful in either acting maliciously and destroying data or stealing data from a server. So why bother? Who uses SQL anyway? Well, Wikipedia does, Google does, Facebook does, Twitter does, Flickr does, YouTube does, and a whole bunch of others. Basically, if you're on a dynamic web application, more than likely it does use MySQL. So here are some famous examples of SQL injections in the past. So I forget when exactly, but a few years back, the Sexual and Violent Offender Registry of Oklahoma went down for routine maintenance, and when they came back up, they had to quite embarrassingly tell the public that they had leaked 11,000 different social security numbers due to a SQL injection vulnerability on their website. Secondly, Heartland Payment Systems, about a month or two later, had about 130 million credit card numbers stolen. And this is the largest leak of consumer data in American history. Now, Heartland Payment Systems is a credit card preprocessor. For those of you who don't know, whenever you go to 7-Eleven and buy a Slurpee, like a $1 or $2 Slurpee, and you charge it on your credit card, that transaction doesn't actually go to MasterCard or Visa. Instead, it goes to Heartland Payment Systems. So these guys receive about 11 million hits every day, and about, I think, billions of transactions every year. There were 3 guys who actually got caught. It was a Russian, and it was actually 2 Russians and an American guy, and it was a big deal in the news. Some of you may know H.B. Gary. H.B. Gary is a security firm, and as you can see from their motto, it's detecting tomorrow's threats today. And it's hilarious because their CMS-driven website, which stands for Content Management System, was vulnerable to a SQL injection attack. And through this, hackers from Lulzsec, I'm not sure if you've heard about them, but they were in the news a few years back. They were a hacktivist group that spawned off of Anonymous. They got into H.B. Gary's website, defaced it, and then also used common passwords and broke into their email and started leaking all of these sensitive emails from the government out to the public. And then MySQL. The official homepage of the MySQL server was vulnerable to a SQL blind injection attack. Fair. And then most recently, I think a lot of you will remember, how many of y'all have a PlayStation Network account? Alright, a few of y'all. Well, I think in 2011 or 2012, Lulzsec SQL injected Sony and got coupon codes, CD keys, user information like addresses, where they live, and credit cards stored in plain text. Sony.com later then went down for maintenance, brought themselves back up, and they were like, oh, we fixed everything, there's no problem anymore, change your passwords, do this, we're really sorry, and then Lulzsec hacks them again from another SQL injection. So, for those of y'all who don't know SQL, here's some basics, alright? So we're going to create a table now. I'm going to take you through the entire process. So the code right here creates this sample database table, and you can see it's as easy as create table if not exists weather. And it will populate it with everything we tell it. So city, state, high, and low. So the goal of this table is to store the highs and lows for a specific city. And next we're going to insert information into that. And likely, it's pretty easy to see that it's going to insert, with those various parameters, the city, the state, the highs and the lows. Yeah. Say we want to select that information and display it to the user. Well, we have the option of selecting multiple rows and multiple columns from that database. So if we say select star from weather, it will just dump all of this information out for you. Say we want to only select the highs and lows of each city, or where the city is equal to Chicago, it will go through and only display the highs and lows for Chicago the city. Nice. That's what we're going to Alright. Table basics. Alright, so now we're going to try and update Austin, Texas's weather. As you can see, I was way too low. I hope you changed it. Way too low on the highs and lows of temperature for Austin. So Kevin so graciously fixed it for me to the staggering 103-degree heat. And then we're going to delete it. Well, nobody likes Detroit. I should not say that. We're going to drop Detroit from the table. And they're gone. That's it. I hope y'all are following along with the code. I know I'm not reading it out, but for the sake of being contrite. Alright. And now, I'm tired of this table, it's stupid, let's get rid of it, and it's done. Alright? So now we're going to characterize the attack. What makes a SQL injection attack a SQL injection? Well, first of all, I want to stress that it is not the fault of MySQL. It's, there's supposed to be a giant red X here. It's not the fault of MySQL. Rather, it's in the implementation of how you access those queries, how you call those queries, how you execute those queries. So more than often, If you're running a web application, most people will decide to use PHP, but now I guess Node.js and Python, Ruby on Rails, these are also coming up. And whenever you call queries a certain way is what makes them injectable. But sometimes what happens is a really naive web developer will decide to run his SQL Server as root or as admin, and that is when MySQL is at fault. You really shouldn't be able to do that because it gives the SQL user permissions to do things that it isn't really supposed to do. Alright? Before we get into the actual SQL injection portion of this presentation, I want to tell you that the purpose of us showing this to you is so that you can learn how to stop it. Because in the end, the people in this room, y'all are going to be the future innovators, and we as the consumer are going to trust you with all this information. And personally, I don't want it getting into the hands of Lulzec or Anonymous or someone who wants to do me harm. Alright? If one of you is going to go ahead and do this, I want to warn you that the really well-established websites like Facebook, Twitter, those guys, they're already hardened against this type of attack. Alright? And more than likely, you're going to get caught. You're going to get cease and desist letters, and there's an entire job dedicated to tracking you down and bringing you to justice. In fact, I think Jago is back there. He's from the UT Information Security Office, and he will hunt you down and possibly expunge you from the school if you decide to attack it in any way. So if you're not going to do that, you might think that, oh, I'm just going to go ahead and find this really small web app, and I'm going to SQL inject it just for fun. I'm going to drop all of its tables, and it's going to be hilarious. Well, you might be unintentionally hurting a mom and pop business. And you're not only destroying the lives of that web developer, but their entire family if their income is based off that web application. That's the feel bad part. And finally, breaking into someone else's database without their permission is illegal, and it's unethical. Alright, didn't know we left that in there. Alright, so there are three types of data exfiltration when you do a SQL injection, right? Because whenever you attack something, your end goal is not to drop everything in that database, because it's not very economically motivating, alright? Like, you want to improve your own economic situation, you want to steal credit card numbers, whatever. So, in-band data exfiltration is when you inject something, the output is vomited out onto your screen. So you see it right where you've done the injection. I don't think we have it set up yet, but there should have been a login form on the left there. And basically, when you log in, it'll tell you login successful or login failed, right? So what if the web developer was naive enough to leave the MySQL error in plain text on that page? Well, that's where you can exploit that and use that to get data from the database. So when you inject your query, you're going to try and dump the entire contents of the database, and we'll try and go through that later on. Out of band, you don't really see very often, and I've never seen it done, but Damon assures me he's done it once or twice. I don't see him. But it's when the data that you get from the attack is retrieved a different way than from what's on the page. So instead of you seeing it on that login form, instead you're having it emailed to you, or it's making a request to a particular DNS server that you can later on. Now, inferential is one of the coolest ones because there's no actual transfer of data. So this web developer was actually intelligent, and they decided that I'm going to handle the SQL error myself, and just instead I'm going to throw a login failure. So in this case, we can use that Boolean logic, and we can infer certain things. We can still inject into that login form, but instead, we're going to do it a certain way to extract the data. But it's going to be painful. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask the database, hey, database, if the character of the first column in the database is an A, why don't you go ahead and delay for 10 seconds? Since we can't see any error, or since we can't see any output from that, the only way we can tell that a certain thing is true is if there is an observable delay behavior on that web page. So the server comes back to me and it's instantaneous. There's absolutely no delay at all. Okay, it's not an A. I'm like, okay, database, why don't you go ahead and try a B. If it's a B, delay for 10 seconds and then come back to me. Nope, instant. So I'll write a script that does this, and it goes A, B, C, D, E, F, all the way until U. And then finally at U, it delays 10 seconds, and I'm like, okay, perfect. First character is a U. And it is as tedious as it sounds. So before we do this slide, I have a little short anecdote about what we do in ComSoc. I remember a friend of mine, let's call him Robert. He's like, hey Manuel, I heard you joined ComSoc. What do you do there? Hacks and stuff. I'm like, okay, well my server is a fortress. It's impenetrable. There's no way you could ever break into it. I'm like, okay, fine, great. So I go on his little project server and I'm looking for vulnerabilities, and it's just a static page. There's nothing fun to do there. So I port scan him and map him, as many of the contestants of the hackathon last year will tell you. I went through all of that and I couldn't find anything. There were no vulnerable services. So I'm like, okay, I guess there's nothing to hack. I can't break in. And then a month later, he comes back and he tells me he's working on a web app. I'm like, okay, this could be interesting. So at 1 o'clock at night, me and Damon, and I think Herschel was there also, we decided to go through this web application and see how many vulnerabilities we could find. And Robert's a smart guy, right? Like, he knows what he's doing. So he obviously handled all of his SQL error statements, and we couldn't do anything, except for an inferential attack. So there we were, waiting 10 seconds to dump the contents of his database per character, and it took forever. I think it took like a good 40 or 50 minutes. But fortunately, we had file read-write through the SQL user, and we decided just for funsies, we're going to download his webapp.php file, and just to show him that we got it. Like, hey, we have your PHP code, I got into your server, it's not very impressive, but I'm showing you this is vulnerable. But one of those strings in that file was his database password. Right? And I'm like, okay, this is pretty good. We have his database password, I'm going to show him, done, it's vulnerable. And then I think Herschel or Damon was like, hey, man, why don't we try his database password as the root password on the SSH server that's running on his server. I'm like, okay, no, it's not going to happen. He wouldn't be stupid enough to reuse his database password as his SSH password. Lo and behold, we got a root shell. We got a root shell on his box, and we were all freaking out. It was a good time at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning, and we were all pretty nervous because I thought Robert was going to be mad as hell. Thankfully, he wasn't though. So, just to teach him a lesson, what I did was I wrote a static page with an ASCII fortress in green text over a black background, and then I took the definition of impenetrable, put it on there, took the definition of fortress, put it on there, and then I signed it with my name, and then logged on. I didn't sleep that night. It was awful. I thought I was going to go to jail. So, I woke up in the morning, and I'm calling him at 10 a.m. in the morning. I'm like, Robert, please, do you want to meet for lunch? Do you want to meet for breakfast? And he's like, okay, fine, Manuel. I'll meet you downstairs at Jester. And then I make him sign something that says he will not sue me. And he was laughing the entire time. It was all good. So how do you detect the vulnerability? Well, the single tick is the staple of every SQL injection. Sometimes if it's a number only, like if you're using a user ID or something, you can try the comment character or the double hyphen, but it's not a silver bullet. If you're doing this manually, it's going to be difficult and you're not going to detect very many vulnerabilities. Instead, what you want to use is a tool like Burp or SQL Map, and that'll do the job for you, and it'll do a much better job of it for you. So here's an example of a really naive web developer and his SQL query, right? So it's select account star from login where username is equal to password, username and password is equal to password for variable. So now, what do you think is going to happen when I input a single tick into that password? Well, it's going to be put in literally. So I close the final string. So everything after that is noted as part of the SQL query and not as part of the string. And that's how a SQL injection actually works. So at the bottom, you can see we're setting the password to be tick, space, or space, A is equal to A. So now when this happens, where username is equal to password, where username is equal to Alice, and password is equal to nothing, or something that's true, it's just going to dump me the credentials for Alice, and I've successfully logged into your account. The username doesn't even have to match anyone in the database. It will just give you the first person. Here's a more malicious example, right? So instead of single tick or A is equal to A, I am going to try and drop the entire login table. None of you should ever do this, but the end result is going to be just as expected. You're going to drop the entire login table. But data destruction isn't the goal. Remember, it's not economically motivated. You shouldn't destroy data. You should steal it. But you should know that this will not work with PHP because PHP disallows stacked queries. So you should also be careful on what you're injecting into. Like if it's a login form, what query is going to be part of that SQL query that's creating that login form, right? It's going to be a select. It's going to be something that can return to you the credentials. If it's a change password form, right, it's going to be an update. If it's a remove user form, it's going to be a delete. So now, if you inject into that delete query, what's going to happen is you're automatically going to delete your user. Let's say you're injecting into a drop, and you have that saying or A is equal to A. You're going to drop the entire table. So you have to be careful and keep in mind what you're injecting into. Other possibilities, you can add new data into the database. Sometimes a really funny prankster, teenager, will try to inject into an e-commerce site, and the e-commerce site will sell something that is of a certain adult persuasion and is very embarrassing. But more professional hackers, what they'll do is they'll inject cross-site scripting code into the database, and hopefully it will be displayed to the user somehow. So basically, cross-site scripting is a subject of another lecture, but what it will allow you to do is to hijack the other person's computer or browser site. You can also modify data currently in the database via a call to update, and it's the same thing. You can update an item, or you could modify a certain person's username to be a section of JavaScript code. Attackers can also, like I said, dump the entire database and look at your password hashes and see or compare them to existing hashes. And if you use a common password somewhere else, what they're going to do is they're going to use that email address that you provided, and they're going to try the same password on that email address. And if you use the same password for everything, your email address is going to get broken into. So how do you prevent it? Well, some people think that input verification is the way to go, where you use pattern matching. You think that eliminating the single tick, usually eliminating the single tick will get rid of any SQL injection vulnerabilities. But it's not the option if you actually want to use the single tick as part of one of your forms. You can also use escape characters. So whenever you have a single tick in your query, PHP will go through beforehand and will append an escape character to each one of those things. So it will just be part of the string and not, it won't exit you from the string literally itself. But the way to go, and the way that Kevin and I go nowadays, after Damon so courteously showed us the error of our ways, is to use prepared statements. So in prepared statements, data is binded to the SQL query at a different time. So whenever you inject, it's not going to be part of that string literal anymore. All that information comes in at a separate time. So what you're doing with prepared statements is separating the control flow from the data flow. And that's what SQL injection is all about. You're trying to fool the server into thinking that your control flow is the same as the data flow. And now it is time for Kevin Hicks to do his amazing demonstration of SQL injection.
Good job,
First I have to go through a little bit of setup. And feel free to talk amongst yourself for a little while I get this thing working.
Questions?
Yes.
Yeah, let's take questions.
Oh, sorry, I forgot. sir. Questions?
Anybody have any questions while we're getting the demo set up? So we did a perfect expert job of explaining everything. You're all going to go out and hack Facebook. I mean, not hack Facebook.
All right. Well, no questions means I did a good job. So thanks.
Kevin, you need the printer? Yes, Manuel's gonna hook up his computer to us.
We should get people to pass the trash stuff, or should we give them?
I say
Throw it away as we get.
as they would.
So, like, watching the SQL logs while we're doing the demo. I mean, maybe it'll work. I guess. It's a work computer. Wherever. Well, as long as I'm not blocking the projector and people can still see it, then I don't care. Yeah, I'm not too good for this. Yeah, you can just like sit on the floor. By the way, if you're interested in learning more about this stuff, I will be taking signups for the email list right outside as soon as the meeting lets out. So if you want to get on our mailing list and figure out what we're doing, that's the best way to go about getting more involved.
Also, our office is ENS 130, and more likely than not, we are always in there.
Problem? Is it working?
He's gonna do it.
You can switch or you got it? Oh wow, cool website. I'll get mine going.
Damon, you have the dongle?
Doesn't he have the dongle?
The dongle's probably what's having the issue.
Oh, do we want to try different? I might have it. Oh, you got it?
Alright.
Should we just roll with it?
This is Kali Linux, Kali, Poly. I'm still uncertain how it's pronounced. But
Speak up.
oh, this is an operating system called Kali Linux, Kali or Kali. I'm still uncertain how it's pronounced. But it is the successor to Backtrack. How many of you have used Backtrack or Kali before? Oh, very few of you. All right. Well, basically what this is an operating system whose sole purpose is penetration testing or hacking, however you would like to call it. And yeah, so we're going to get things started by going to our, we have a little setup, hopefully. No problem. We have a pretty badly written web application called Wacko Picko. Don't attempt to go there. I don't know what's actually there. If you would like to poke around on it, it's lab.ut6sac.org. But please wait until the presentation is over before you actually write anything. So anyway, so what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to log in. Now, what's a very common username that people use? Bob is used in almost every single application you'd find out there. Now, we don't know Bob's password. We're not going to get him with Bob's password. So what we could try to do is a SQL inject for Bob. So we have this, we have that single tick, as was mentioned earlier, and a comment. And a pound symbol, which means comment, so it will ignore the rest of the string. We have successfully ended that string. So, oh, Bob. No way. Good man, Bob.
Yes way.
Anyway, so now we're in. But
I work for my
Wait, you want me to display a SQL one, right?
oh yeah.
Was it right?
So what?
Bar log, MySQL.
Yeah, I think so.
It's probably not going to show the. Just don't worry about it.
You
Keep
can,
rolling.
you can, if you want to change the log level variable with our normal.
Not worth it. Just go.
Just a little variable.
Just go.
Okay. Yeah, whatever. So next we're going to, so now that we've just gotten in, we're going to try another little technique. We are going to try to obtain their entire database, the contents of all of it. So we're going to use one of my favorite little tools. It's called Burp Suite.
Who's used Burp before? Anybody? Okay, even less.
Get rid of it. So what this does is that it is able to intercept and listen all the traffic that you're sending across your machine. But first what we're going to do is turn intercepting off because we want it to actually go through. We just want it to monitor, not steal. There's a difference in that. And
I think you opened it twice. It's in the taskbar.
Did?
Yeah.
Oh dear. Now we have one.
I'll go to options and turn on the listener because you had two open and messing up. So just options, down, left, way left, up, forward. Okay, and click running. Okay, you're ready.
Yeah, now we have a proxy.
It's not normally that difficult.
So what we can do is set our web browser to use a certain proxy. My mouse stopped moving.
Everyone think happy thoughts.
Okay, we're back.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. We're good.
Now we're going to use a proxy. We're going to use a bus 127. I'm going to pretend this is real.
A few too many dots.
This is the loopback address in case anyone's not familiar. Any computer that refers to 127.0.0.1 is always referring to itself. And this is the magic
All
word.
protocols.
The what?
All protocols.
Oh yes. Every single proxy. Make it all the proxy. Yeah.
suspense.
Yeah. So he's basically directing all of his web browser traffic to come back to his local machine, go through Burp, which will inspect it, and then be sent along to the web server.
Yep. So now, we're going to create our own user. First we have to have valid login credentials to be able to do this, because we have to learn the syntax that they use. So, let's fill out some fields.
You got hacked.
You got hacked. You got hacked. And the best password there is call.
What was your password?
We got hacked. Hold on one moment.
Okay.
You got hacked.
Alright.
You got trade bugs.
And then we're going to go back to our Burp suite.
We need a login.
Do what? Oh, I need a login actually. That's true. Good catch. We need now since registration actually inserted a query, we don't really have exactly what we need to get the whole database since we only have an insertion. What we need is to somehow invoke a selection. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take that same account that we just made and log in. I hope I remember this password. Okay. I have 100 trade bucks to spend, so that's nice of them. You sign up for their website and they give you $100. And yes, trade bucks.
Look at the conversion rate from the state ones.
I need them to get us.
Whoever's hacking our projector, come on guys.
I'm cool, guys. I'm cool. Save for later.
It shouldn't take too much time.
Yeah, we're almost done, don't worry.
It comes back almost every time.
Almost every time.
Use the .can.
Alright, good mojo, guys, good mojo.
Okay, hurry, quick.
Use the .can. Like, put your screen
Put the
forward.
laptop
something.
under
No, that's terrible. That's not gonna work.
My professor actually
Okay,
did
go.
that one.
Aw. Come on. Alright, go, go.
Run.
Act fast.
We're gonna do it. We're gonna do it. So we're gonna go back through. And we found our interception
History.
history. We found our interception history. What we did, we have our register post, but we don't need that one. We need our login post. And you can see exactly what I sent when it comes back.
Oh, hey. Wow. Yeah, that was the password, everybody. Suspense is over. So we're basically taking this request he made to the server to log in, and we're saving it to a file for processing.
Alright, so now we're going to use my favorite tool, SQL Map. So what we're going to do is the SQL Map is designed to basically manipulate it'll try a whole bunch of combinations of different queries in an attempt to see if it can find something to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this sample file that we got, and we're going to dump all the database because that's just a parameter that you can select. And we're going to exclude the system databases because there are some databases that SQL or MySQL just kind of holds there, but we're not really interested in those. They don't really hold anything crucial. Now we're just starting. So it's just asking me a whole bunch of questions. Do you want to test some payloads? Nah, very cool. Do you want to include some MySQL tests? Yes, of course, that's what we're here for. Do we want to accept redirects? So if it gives me an error, it will want to redirect me somewhere else. I don't want that. I want to hear from the source. I don't care about your redirect. Nope. What is that?
That was the money shot.
Wow.
Okay, so now I found an error-based string, so that the web application itself actually spat back an error, which, oh, this is great. We actually know what the MySQL string is now. We don't have to guess anymore. So much for the guessing. We're just going to end the detection phase, and now we are dumping the entire database. And there's that user that we just made a little while ago. You got hacked.
Oh yeah, there he is.
If you can see him.
Yeah.
But all these passwords are stored in hashes. We don't care about hashes. We can't read that. So this thing comes with a little dictionary that we can use. And it's going to try a whole bunch of combinations of words, common passwords, to see if these hashes will match any of them. Because hashing is a one-way function. You can't just read off of it. Do you want to use suffixes? No, we don't have time for that. So now it's trying every 5-digit password that it can imagine.
It's a lot like war games.
Make your password more than 5 characters and you should be okay.
Yeah, he was joking, by the way.
Do you want more dictionary? Why not? Let's do some more dictionary back.
Ooh, we got a password.
Uh-oh, I found one.
The password was admin, in case you can't read it. So, someone's getting fired.
How about some more data for you? Okay, and we're done.
So let's see what we got.
That's pretty much that. So now we have. Let's go find our treasure.
Treasure.
Share. I hope I remember this. SQL /cd output. Here's all of our, here's all the little database. Each of these is a single table from the database. So we got like 10, 12 tables? Yeah. We got a lot. So which one of these looks interesting?
Admin.
How about admin?
Yeah.
Comments.
Yes, let's read the comments.
Yeah, comments. That'll be riveting.
So now we found a whole bunch of
Adam.
yeah, some Adam D has a user. These are all the, I guess, what we could assume is administrative users. Bob's an administrative user, I don't know why. But now we can see up at the top, admin, and now we've actually discovered his password because he's so smart.
His password is admin. But even if his password wasn't admin, we still would have found it eventually.
One day.
One day.
It may take the age of the universe, but we may find it. This may take the age of the universe. But now that we've created a new user on here, we've logged in as You Got Hacked. We have an extra button down there at the bottom for the administration panel. If you go on Facebook and you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll see an admin button.
He's lying.
Because you will never get to the bottom. Now I have admin, and yeah.
That's the crappy admin panel. So that's it. We got in.
Still under construction, but once they finish it, oh man. And just one more little trick I wanted to show you. This isn't really a SQL injection, but it's a logic bomb, and that's you may have noticed that we have a table for coupons. So we also found all their coupon codes that we could use. So Super U21, wherever that came from. Okay, sure. And let's go back. We can't play Flash, darn. But this site is basically for picture sales. Like people upload pictures. I guess amateur photographers, they think they're all artsy and everything. They put their pictures up for sale and they're all blank. We have a lovely house.
And you'll never get to see it.
Yes, of course, they're going to pay for it. They're going to pay for it good. It costs 30 trade bucks. We have that.
Yeah, we have plenty.
We have 100 trade bucks.
130.
Oh, and for some reason we have a waterfall in our cart too. And yeah, my old coupon codes are still here from testing. But anyway, you can use this coupon code as many times as you want and get 10 additional % off. So that's a little something that they forgot to check.
So you math geniuses, how long till we get to 100% off? See what I did there?
Wait, rounding errors.
We'll never get to 100%.
Yeah,
No, hardware has rounding errors.
So you get all the
That's,
He gets it.
that's about what I got.
What?
Well, awesome job.
Alright guys, we're just about done. Thank you Kevin and thank you Damon for staying up all night. Not all night, wow. Staying up late, 1 o'clock in the morning, working on this presentation. It's awesome. Next meeting is on September the 18th, and National Instruments is coming by, and they're going to be doing a lecture on software-defined radios. It's going to be cool. Come check it out. Also, I know I won't see all of y'all again next time, but I want to urge you, if you're a freshman, join a student organization. It's a lot of fun. You'll make a lot of friends. It's worth your time.
Also, I'll be right at this desk outside taking sign-ups for our mailing list. So if you want to get more involved, I'll put your name, password, social security number, credit card number.
And one more thing.
So,
Before everyone leaves,
my brand
raise
new.
your hand if you're a CS major.
Yeah, how many of you are here for 6 SAC?
And double E majors.
What's up?
It's about half. So, our next general meeting will actually be.
Everybody.
Our next general meeting will be on actually next week. So it's going to be next Wednesday, the 11th, and I'm going to try to find a larger room. So stay. Oh yes, it's going to be 8 to 9 because the big ACM is having their meeting from 7 to 8. So hopefully they'll load you up and we go on. Anyway, so 8 to 9 o'clock next week, and go to ut6sac.org for more information.
Also, the Communication Society is